Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're back. The Retail Bulletin has been taking a small summer recess, but we're delighted to be back with you with the first of our events this autumn, this Wednesday, 15th of September. Thank goodness it's a drier day after what felt like a month of rainfall was dumped on the capital yesterday. I, for one, was one of those people that got absolutely drowned. My dog was refusing to leave the apartment, and so I'm happy just to see it dry out there today. We've got a brilliant set of events lined up for you today for the Future of Retail Marketing webinar, and a brilliant panel to kick us off as well. I'm going to ask them to tell you about themselves in just a moment. But do get involved in our events today. We're running 4 throughout the day. We'd love to see you at every single one. You're always welcome. We'd love to get your participation. As always with these events, we have a Q&A button for you. The Q&A button is there for you to use. And my job as the moderator is to make sure that every single question you ask gets answered. I'm Darren. I am the moderator for these events today. I'm very happy to be back here at the Retail Bulletin. Thank you to the team for continuing to hire me. I will try to do my best so that you hire me again for the next one. And I'm the founder of Williams Harding Consulting. Williams Harding works with a variety of clients in hospitality, retail mainly. My current clients, though, are the awesome chocolate brand called Canoops, which is chocolate drinks, which is starting to roll out across London, and online wholesale and corporate gifting is all on the route now as well. And my other client is called Impress. It's a Barcelona-based orthodontics brand, and we're just making our UK debut. So we'll be opening in Spitalfields and Manchester Spinningfields in October, November, and we've got 3 more cities in play at the moment. So we're really excited to bring that brand to the UK as well. I'm also the chairman of Scrubbed, a men's skincare brand, which was once a client of mine and I became the chairman of. And I've just become the chairman of Liberty Music PR as well on the 1st of September, so quite a new appointment. So my cup is full, and I love doing stuff like this as well because it gives me a day to talk to interesting people that I'm just about to introduce to you right now. Hello, panel. Give us a wave. You're all there? Okay, good. I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves, and then we can crack on with the webinar properly. So, Trevor, we've worked together before. Good morning. How are you doing, sir?
Good to see you again, Darren, and what a great panel and what a great event. Yeah, I'm Trevor Gordon. I'm currently working as a consultant advising a wide variety of clients on anything to do with customer, digital, customer experience, retail, and omnichannel. So this includes clients in financial services, retail, manufacturing, and utilities. Previous to that, I was in senior global roles at Sodexo, Vodafone, View, Cinemas, and Auto Trader. So really looking forward to today. Thanks, Darren.
You're very welcome, and great to have you back as well. So I look forward to hearing your insight. Jack, tell us about you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So good morning, everybody. My name is Jack Sweeney, and I am the founder of a boutique strategy consultancy called JDS. And we work with primarily consumer product SMEs, helping them with all things marketing, sales, and e-commerce, and mainly actually bringing all of those things together. So there's a single coherent plan. Before that, I worked for big household name brands, most notably at Karcher as their marketing director in the UK and that's me.
Welcome to the panel, sir. We haven't worked together before, so looking forward to hearing your insights as well. Thank you very much. Over to you, Shweta. How are you doing? Good morning.
Hi, Darren. Thanks so much. And hi, everybody. So glad to be here. So my name is Shweta Pamula, and I currently work for Samsung in the European office. My role there is the category insights manager, focusing on domestic or home appliances. So my role really is to bring the voice of the customer into as many different business functions and decisions as possible. Prior to this, my background's always been in fashion. So it's the first time in consumer electronics. And prior to this, I was in fashion, again, working in insight functions in brands like River Island and Debenhams and various different companies.
Well, it's great to have you on the panel, and I'm looking forward to hearing your insights. Thanks for joining us. And last but not least, Katharine, good morning. Hello.
Hi, lovely to be here, and hi to everyone else as well. I'm Katharine, and I'm Head of Marketing Communications for the EMEA region at parcelLab. I've been with the business for just over 2.5 years. and was actually employee number 4 in the UK. So helped launch our UK market, which has been a super exciting journey to see us grow. And we're now at about 150 people globally. So we've grown massively since being there. A bit about who parcelLab are. We help brands unlock the potential of their post-purchase experiences, revolutionizing how they interact with their customers across delivery, shipping, and also returns as well.
It's exciting, isn't it, when you're in on the ground at the beginning of something and then you kind of see this thing evolve around you. It's wonderful to look back to those early days and remember when there was just a handful of you. So
yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Thank you, Darren. And listen, thank you as well to parcelLab for being the sponsor for this session today as well. I really appreciate that. We love all of our panelists, but we really appreciate our sponsorship as well. It makes these events possible. So thank you, parcelLab, for doing that for us today. That's the panel. We're going to kick off in just a second. There is another member here today as well. That's Scamp, my dog. If you've watched these before, you do know that she does make an uninvited appearance sometimes. She suddenly might just appear from left or right of camera. She's had a long walk, she's had her breakfast, she's had a chew, so I suspect she's probably sleeping somewhere. But she could come to life at any second and suddenly decide to join us. So Scamp may or may not make an appearance, who knows? She might be camera shy for the whole of the session. But yeah, just so you're pre-warned and pre-armed. And in this virtual world that we've been living in for 18 months, semi-emerging from it now, but please don't worry about interruptions from any of our panelists. If we have pets running around, kids, partners, any of the above, everybody's welcome at the TRB. You can bring them all in, so don't worry about it. With those days of having perfect webinars in closed rooms are long behind us all, I think. Good. Should we kick this off? Trevor, I'm going to come to you, sir.
Excellent.
Let's chew over some of this content, shall we?
Please.
Right. Where should we go? Where should organizations start in trying to determine the best way to leverage data or tech to drive customer engagement? How's that for a kickoff question?
Yeah, good one. And I think, first off, what a great panel and what a great place to start today's session. I think, as it said in the intro to this session, with the large shift to digital as a result of the pandemic, many businesses are going to be somewhere down the road with this. And there's, and we're talking a lot of traditional bricks and mortar retailers who have been maybe doing digital, but really kind of going full throttle with it. And we see that I see this from my current clients, there's always the worries that the data is not accurate, our tech isn't right, and there's, some things we've got to improve. But really, in terms of using data for customer engagement, just get started and keep it simple. And I think the key to this is there's a real tendency with so much data available these days. The key to using customer data to drive engagement is, how does this actually increase the understanding of your customer? And actually figuring out what business challenges are you actually trying to solve. With so much data available, I see with my clients, they want to look at 200 to 300 data points. There's the potential to become almost data blind. And really, you should be looking at this through the eyes of your customer and thinking, what are the top 3 things we want to know about our customers? And actually, what problems are we actually trying to solve? You can then look at this in terms of starting to use things like personalization, increases the social loyalty, but really just starting keeping it simple and focusing on what problems are you trying to solve, and actually then what business challenges are you aligning to that. And I think it's also a cultural thing. A lot of people worrying about, oh, we don't know this, we don't have the right tech, as I've said, but you just really want to get into that test and learn and develop that culture. Not everything's going to go right. It's going to be that 80-20 framework. And one of my customers said the other day what they've tried to instill with their teams and kind of using their data for the customer engagement is bake it. It's going to take some while. One of their team came up with the bake it, don't fake it. So just really keep it simple and get started. You can build up as you go along, but with all the data, there's so much out there. It's just best to get started and keep it simple. Hopefully that answers the question.
It does answer the question. I think that keep it simple thing is, in some ways, it's an obvious strategy, and it does absolutely make sense. And it's bewildering sometimes how some businesses do exactly the opposite and overcomplicate things and almost try to do so much and not very well.
And there's so much data available these days. It is a term I think is really accurate, is that data blind. There's just so much data, you're not able to understand what it's actually telling you. And the key is you're not able to take any actionable insight from that. You know, you may have all this data, but what the hell are you going to do with it?
Good segue into Jack. Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah.
Jack, I was going to talk to you about the multitude of data sources that are out there, because there's just tons of it, right? So how do brands use that multitude of data available to them for better planning? Because sometimes it's just overwhelming, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually what Trevor said then. You know, about how sometimes companies can become, or brands can become, blinded by data, and that actually data is completely worthless without insights, which drive actions, which ultimately drive value. So the way that we tend to approach planning, and I think quite important to define planning before I go off and explain the point, is planning is very much either trying to solve a problem or unlock an opportunity. At least that's how we look at it. And the way that we encourage clients to go through that almost diagnosis process is to collate as much data as they can, be that from first party sources, so their own e-commerce data, email data, customer support data, through to second and third party sources also. So we actually are an advocate of collecting all the data you possibly can, mapping that data, but quite quickly eliminating stuff that is just not relevant to the particular problem or opportunity that you're trying to unlock. So for us, it's very much about using all of the data that you have available, but very quickly, once it's gathered, figuring out what's not relevant to your particular challenge, and then trying to figure out what are the insights and subsequent action that are going to drive value for your business.
And how do teams get that so wrong then? So how do teams sometimes use data that probably isn't going to be valuable, or work with the wrong stuff?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake we see made is we typically work with founders, so very emotively involved with their business, and they will have their own opinion or assumption on what needs to be done, and then they'll go into the data collection process just trying to validate that opinion. And we always say that is the completely wrong way to do it. What you need to do is go in with like an objective collection mindset, which is I am just trying to find truthful points of data. And data isn't always digital, by the way. It's not always just email marketing or CRM or Google Analytics. Data can also be used from traditional channels or first-party research, but it's going into solving that problem or unlocking that opportunity. But the data collection exercise needs to be objective. And that's the biggest mistake we see made, is that they're looking for answers to their opinion rather than trying to find the truth. Yeah.
The founders example is a particularly good one, I think, as well. It made me smile. Founders are brilliant, but yeah, they can certainly have a very clear opinion of what they want to achieve. And if you want to find the answer that you're looking for, you can find it in the data somewhere, right?
It's confirmation bias at its best. So it's very dangerous. And you know, I've been guilty of it. I think we've probably all been guilty of it, when you've got a hunch and you want data to prove the hunch, but that is very, very dangerous ground to tread, because I think once you find something that you think supports your argument, it almost gives you more confidence to execute almost blindly. And that, I mean, it's almost better to have no data at all at that point, because you are, and like I said, executing with confidence that is based on bad data.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks, Jack. I'll come back to you shortly as well. Shweta, good morning. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
Good morning.
Insights. So you've worked in fashion retail businesses. You're now at the Samsung, a giant electronics business. What challenges have you seen integrating insights into businesses that you've worked with?
I think there's really a number of different challenges, and as Jack rightly pointed out, a lot of businesses, they want to hear what they've got a lot of experience, people in higher roles. They feel like they know best. So it's really important to make sure that we're providing an objective lens on what the decision or the outcome should be. I think I can broadly kind of define the challenges. And for me, the three big ones are getting, even though you have insight, it's really important to make sure that the insight gets seen by the right people who can actually action the insights. The second one is around getting insights involved in earlier stages of the planning. So a lot of the time, insights are very reactive. It's like, I need this quick decision, can you do some quick consumer testing to let me know what, if I should go with option A or option B? And then the last one is around getting insights actioned in the first place. So you might have a insights, provide a really great recommendation, very consumer backed, but actually it just dies. You present it and nothing really happens with it. And I think there's a couple of different ways to really tackle some of these challenges. One is around getting stakeholders involved as early on in the process as possible. So particularly if we're doing any research, doing a kickoff meeting, saying actually, what are your objectives for the research? What decision are you hoping to get through this research, so that they're really engaged and they feel invested in the outcome. Making sure that in terms of our communications, we're really flexing the insights in our presentation to the audience. So if we're working with marketing, what are the, what's important to them versus working with product teams. Workshopping, so to make sure that insights don't just die a slow death, that we're talking about what the insights are, what are the next steps, who's accountable to kind of activate these insights. And then of course, insights as a function is really new. So ideally we want to get in at earlier stages, but I think we need to help businesses with kind of smaller reactive pieces as much as we can to make sure that we're building that trust and credibility, so that when they are doing their kind of bigger long-term product planning, they're kind of thinking of us and bringing us into that kind of process.
It's interesting when you talk about insights dying a death, because I think I've lost count for years of working with big businesses myself and small businesses where huge bits of work are done around gathering insights, and then really they just kind of end up in a drawer somewhere. And,
absolutely.
And it's a tragic waste of the work that led to them in the first place. So
completely.
How do businesses prevent that? How do they prevent the cycle of insights that actually yield nothing?
So what I'm trying to do, which is a little bit newer, is we recently at Samsung did this huge, kind of qual-quant project on understanding the vacuum cleaner buyer. And I'm trying to do post-delivery, do workshop sessions, like I mentioned. So here we'd bring together kind of all the decision makers. So, the relevant people from each market. So someone from marketing, someone from retail, someone from digital. And then we collectively discuss what are the insights, what's relevant for their markets. And crucially, we kind of leave the workshop with what are you going to do differently, and then making sure that people have a little bit of accountability. So it's and they're in the room, we've all discussed it together. So you're kind of you're left with a sense of okay, I'm going to do my business differently based on this.
Got it. Thank you for that, and I look forward to coming back to you shortly as well. Thank you for that insight. Excuse the pun. Thank you for the insight. There you go. Katharine, I'm going to come to you. We've actually had a message from an audience member. This is from Pradeep, and they're saying hello to all the hosts and panelists. They're joining us from Bangalore in India, and they're very happy to be here. So we're happy to have you here as well. So thanks for saying hello to us. And it's nice to have people here from other shores as well. Katharine, I'm going to come to you then, if I may. How can brands use delivery data to create exceptional experiences for customer? I mean, what is it the customer actually wants? Does anyone understand that bit?
I think this is a thing, and I think this actually echoes what's already been discussed and really hones in on those insights. And I think so, the data around delivery is in abundance. It's actually kind of overwhelming when you look at it sometimes, and brands rarely know how to harness it and how to utilize it in their favor. And it comes back to those insights and taking a step back and saying, let's review this. Who are our customers? What do they actually want? Someone who's shopping online for the first time wants a very different journey to someone who shops online 5 times a week. They're going to be a lot less anxious that their delivery is going to arrive than that person who rarely shops online. So they're kind of different journeys there. And actually, when you really start to harness that data, you can really start to personalize those journeys to those people. And and also kind of looking at how do we communicate with people and where do we communicate. So often, you know, we're inundated with emails. I don't know about anyone else, my personal email inbox, I rarely even look at it anymore because it is a nightmare. I'm like, it's like 300 emails a day. So really, actually, what we need to use more is our SMS. It's become a very functional channel. I don't know about anyone else. I use WhatsApp to talk to people. I rarely use SMS anymore. I use Teams. Like, it's all on those kind of instant messaging channels. And SMS has become very functional. And actually, what research has shown is that customers want that really important information via SMS. So for example, morning of delivery, they want to know what time it's arriving between 10 and 11, for example. And that's the kind of information they want to receive via text because they're going to see it and they're going to know. Whereas that more transactional, your delivery is on its way, here's some kind of interesting content to go with it. That can be more used on email, where it's a lot kind of less important, but just as important in the journey, but doesn't need to be seen as instantly. So yeah, it's kind of all back to the same point of really reviewing what you've got and taking that step back and really just looking at the data and seeing what you can get from it, and breaking it down and stop seeing it this massive project, and actually those little things, and start mapping out those personas and seeing what your different customers are actually going to want from you. Yeah, and almost deciding what groups, starting with the end in mind, and what certain groups of customers actually want, and then working backwards. Yeah, and I think so many brands, I mean, we're all guilty of this. As we said, when it's your business, you're like, I know what's right, this is what people want. And sometimes we kind of forget that there is a customer, and actually we're all customers. Every single person that works for a retailer also buys from retailers. So actually it's kind of taking that information and from shopping elsewhere, what are they doing? What's working well for you with them? What's not working well? What can we learn from that to bring into our own brand and really make ours stand out?
Katharine, do you see many differences across different categories? So based on style of product or price of product, or potentially if a particular category has a higher propensity towards a particular type of person, does that affect, have you got data or insights that suggest that affects what brands need to do? Yeah, it's actually quite interesting. We do annual research into kind of the whole retail market across all our regions in what the top retailers are doing. And actually this year we delved into health and beauty because obviously it's gone fully online. It's a business that's traditionally offline. So suddenly they're kind of faced with this issue where they're like, we don't really have an e-commerce offering. It's very simple. And our customers are, you know, the Amazon users of the world. And suddenly our customer journeys, it's not adding up and people are getting super frustrated. And what that research found, was that they are so behind compared to like fashion, for example, mainly, who have been online for years. You know, they have really just nailed down what they're doing online, and they know what their customer wants. They know when they want it. And suddenly health and beauty, which is so much about experience and so much about community, is suddenly really lacking when they've tried to go online. And we're seeing massive changes, which is amazing. And that industry is investing so heavily in e-commerce now, which is great to see. And I think, the way that we're consuming has just totally changed. And those businesses, they're kind of a bit more old school, are suddenly kind of sitting up and being like, what are we doing? We need to, speak to our customers better. And I think that's massively pushed by our kind of millennial Gen Z kind of customers who aren't going to stand for kind of subpar experiences. They're the ones who really are kind of experience loyal rather than brand loyal. Let's be honest, there's kind of the argument for that. It's interesting, isn't it? Because quite a few of our clients are what you would call traditional retail distributed brands that are entering the world of direct to consumer and e-commerce. And because they've never had to do it and they actually have no real data available to them on how to do it, it can end up, as you've said, being or feeling very disjointed to start with for the customer. Yeah. Really interesting. And of course, this was already happening before the little subject of the pandemic came along. And the pandemic has just basically sharpened the saw for everybody. And it's a real sink or swim moments for some businesses. And ultimately some businesses have absolutely grabbed hold of the pandemic and made it be the kind of the pivotal moment they've had to change. But others, I think, are still struggling to get their heads above water with it as well. Yeah. So we've definitely been through some forced change, and there's ongoing progressive change as well.
Brilliant first round. Can I just say thank you, audience, for sticking with us. Actually, our audience number has grown since we started the webinar. So keep doing what you're doing, panel. Keep doing what you're doing. You're obviously saying some good stuff. So we're going to try and do that all over again. Audience, please, just to remind you, we do want to hear from you as well. It's lovely to get hellos, but we're also welcoming questions as well. So use the Q&A button. You can ask a general question for the panel, or you can pick on one of them to ask a question to, and I will make sure it gets to them. So yeah, please do use the Q&A. Let's have another round. Here's a big one coming your way, Trevor. How do you develop an aligned, here we go, customer, data, tech, strategy to drive sustainable growth, emphasis on the sustainable, whilst getting senior leaders in the business to invest in that as well?
No, good. First off, I was going to say excellent points by the panel, and I'm just going to probably draw on each of some of the things that they've said. You've also highlighted, Darren, that this is kind of a sink or swim moment. You know, we've seen a lot of people actually having to really look at their customer experience and start with digital. So right now, they're not only seeing it as a means of survival, but for senior leaders, this is actually a chance to differentiate. And you've touched on the word sustainable growth. Actually, you're going to get sustainable growth through improved customer engagement and better experience. And then that's so important. A couple of the things that, for example, that Katharine and Jack said, I really like Jack's point about bringing in all that data, because if we think about this, you're building up that understanding of your customer. Everyone's working on that single view of the customer. And there's three legs to that. There's the traditional demographic. I'm Trevor Gordon, I'm a male, I'm blah, blah, blah. There is the transactional, and this is what Katharine touched on. What have they bought? How's the delivery worked? How's that fulfillment worked? How's that supply chain work? Because it's just not that digital side. It is that kind of whole omni-channel piece. And the third element of that is what I would call the digital exhaust. You know, it's the behavioral data. You're getting data from all these sources, but how, to Jack's point, do you bring these together to start make sense out of that? So having in your strategy to build up, how are you going to build up that understanding of your customer and your data and what it's telling to you? And then I think Shweta's point is super important. You need to engage your stakeholders early on in this, because as with Jack, I work with founders in smaller businesses, but then large global multinationals. A discussion I had earlier this week was the client in entertainment. They quadrupled their share price in the last 5 years. And as one of their senior leaders said, we know our customers, look at our growth. And it's actually now using the data in customer engagement is an enabling tool and a strategic business tool to help improve that. So I think there's a real part about demystifying it. And one of the things that Jack said is, okay, so we've got all this data, it's telling us different things, but aligning that to understanding what those leaders' businesses' challenges are is super important. And back to what we said at the start, keep it simple. Look at 1 or 2, 3 business challenges that senior leader is dealing with, and actually come up with a hypothesis and a use case to actually say, this is how we're actually going to help solve it. And I think to Shweta's point, having those proof points early on to show that this is actually making a difference and surfacing the data in the right way through the right dashboards and everything else. But that whole part about demystifying it is there. And then with that, that's where you ask for the money. That's where you build your roadmap for your investment in your tech and your data and everything else. But partnering with that business effectively to get that buy-in as to what you're doing, and then building that confidence in the results, and then you can build that roadmap for investment. Well, there was a lot in that answer, but hopefully that made sense. But
no, I mean, it's a very
point.
full and compelling answer. Thank you, sir. And it's good, you know, to hear you draw on some of the content that's already been shared from some of the panel as well. I think it's threading together beautifully. So thank you very much. Jack, what watch outs are there for brands to consider before using data to drive decision making? You've already touched on this, I guess, with some of the entrepreneur examples, but are there other watch outs you could share?
Yeah, I think, like you said, quite a few of these have been mentioned as we've sort of been around that first round table. I think there are a few others that I would just highlight. So the first that I touched on was like psychological biases. So for example, confirmation bias, when you go into a process and you are looking for data to validate your opinion. There are a whole host of other psychological biases that are at play in each of our lives all day, every day. We won't go into that now because of time. The second one that's slightly more tangible would be what I call channel bias. And I'll give you an example of this from my experience. I can't say who, but We were doing a big sort of understanding our customer piece of work at a big brand where I've worked with previously. And we were looking initially at the data sources that we had available to us to start building a better picture of who our customer is and how they behave and some of the stuff that Trevor mentioned. And we looked at customer service data, and the customer service data suggested that there was a particular type of person buying our products. And this customer service data was primarily from product registrations. So people coming on and registering their new products because they were quite high ticket items. But what we realized is when we completed the exercise is that actually there is a particular type of person that registered their product. And that actually skewed the entire data source or the whole collection of customers because they were only one type of customer that we actually served. Whereas if we had gone blind and gone, right, we're going to base our entire customer profile on product registration data, it would have been incredibly wrong. So just watch where you're getting the data from and allow for biases that will drive. E-commerce is another great example. You know, there are, I don't like using demographics too much, but there are demographics that typically are more akin to e-commerce. It won't represent your whole customer base. I think that's the point. The final one, and then I promise I'll shut up, is that whilst data is great, and this whole panel is about data, data is only ever historic. And actually what we think you have to do is once you've done that data collection exercise, you've looked for insights, you've come up with an action plan, is still overlay your intuition and don't become completely reliant on data. You know, intuition from a balanced place is usually based on experience, not on like a gut feel or an opinion. So start with the data, absolutely, and go through that process, but don't forget that the future is not predicted in data and that intuition still matters.
It does indeed. And we don't want you to shut up, Jack. So thank you very much. We've actually had some love in as well, some praise from a lady called Georgia. So thank you for this. I'll read what she says. She says, it's a pleasure to join a virtual meeting that is generating energy through the enthusiasm and passion of the panelists and indeed the moderator. Keep going, guys. Great stuff. Thank you, Georgia. That's much appreciated. It's nice to take some time out to say that you're enjoying it. And the audience is still with us as well. So that's all good. Thank you very much. That's a good shot in the arm for us. Shweta, I'm going to come back to you if I may. Are there pitfalls to being overly focused on customer data? And what do you see as those pitfalls?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an interesting one because, you know, we talk so much about how important customer data is, and it absolutely is. It's really hugely important to understand who your customer is, both in terms of demographically, but also attitudinally. Who are they? What makes them tick? But I think a lot of businesses kind of start and stop here because a lot of, you know, customer data is own data. It's easily accessible. It tends to be a little bit cheaper. But then you kind of lose sight of the bigger picture around who's not your shopper and could be your shopper. And I think this is hugely important because, you know, as a business, you're only ever going to have a set amount of people. And if you want to kind of encourage growth, we really need to think about who's currently not shopping with us. And, you know, for most brands, acquisition is really, really important. And we can only really acquire new customers if we know how best to serve them. A good example of like where, you know, this has worked and this hasn't worked, you know, I was previously at, you know, at Debenhams, and we were really good at understanding customer data. We did a lot around analyzing our CRM database. We even had our own customer panel. But the problem with this is that it was very much almost self-perpetuating truth. We're asking, you know, we're testing a range amongst customers that only, you know, that already shop us, they love our style. Meanwhile, you know, we're hemorrhaging customers, you know, all these new customers who, you know, who should be shopping with us, they fit the profile, aren't shopping with us because we're not serving them. So I think, you know, that's a way that we, you know, the brand stopped evolving to kind of adapt to potential customers. And then on the flip side, a really, you know, a good example of where thinking about prospective customers has worked well is when I was at River Island. I worked on a big piece understanding prospective and non-buyer analysis, and, you know, looking at market sizing of a consumer who again fits the bill, but doesn't currently shop River Island, and understanding where else they shop that we could, partner with. And this led to a new partnership, which meant that we were able to find a new revenue stream without cannibalizing our own sales. So I think, customer data is important, but potential and prospective customer data is really important. And I think the ideal scenario is to find a business strategy or make decisions that appeal, that find that sweet spot between existing customers and prospective customers as well.
It's really good insight. I think, how long were you at the Debenhams business for?
Well, I was there for a year before it went under.
Right. Okay. It's because it was such a heritage retailer. It was such an important part of the high street, and I get out and about in various cities at the moment, and I think one of the saddest things to see is these massive Debenhams buildings that are just sat there, empty, with their sort of posters hanging down in the window. You were there at a difficult time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was it obvious when you were in that difficult time that things were going a certain way, or was there always hope right till the end?
A mix of both, actually. And I think the thing was, like, while I was there, it was clear that actually the business was really, I was there, so I can't really speak to how it was before, but you could tell that the business was becoming very insight-centric, data-centric, really kind of, we had a really great working relationships with everyone we worked with. Definitely the Debenhams brand was evolving. We were thinking about sustainability strategy, where we're looking at kind of creating new brands that kind of fit a new customer profile that we were trying to invite. So it was all happening. I think the problem was that it was just a little bit too late in the day.
Yeah, too late. I was just going to say, it sounded like it was a great lot of activity going on that we just arrived a little bit too late.
Absolutely.
It's difficult, but great insight. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I see you questions out there. We've got 3 questions in from the audience so far, so you'll all be answered. Keep them coming. I'm just going to finish off this second round of questions with Katharine, and then we will go to some audience questions as well. Katharine, how can brands use data to create truly personalized delivery emails that will set them apart? I get tons of this stuff, and it's very generic. So how can brands do that?
Yeah, so first of all, I guess to clarify what we mean by truly personalized, anyone can refer to someone by their first name and kind of put some product recommendations at the bottom that are based off what they're buying. I personally don't really see that as true personalization anymore. We can go further, and I'm quite passionate about trying to push brands to go further. We're ordering more in line than we ever have, and we're inundated with those tracking emails, as you said. I mean, I shop a lot, and often I receive, let's say, 3 emails in one day from the same carrier, and I've got to try and figure out, okay, which order is which. But one order might be really important to arrive, might be a gift for someone, for example. I want to know that that's going to be arriving, and I want to know when, so I can make sure I'm home. Don't know about anyone else. I get so much more frustrated when I miss a delivery. Now that I'm home and I'm working from home, I get so much more annoyed. I'm like, my one walk I've gone out on, I've missed my delivery. This is annoying. It's now that we have so many more of those, actually, how can we differentiate? And that's where really owning that part of the customer journey, and actually it's our most emotional and our most engaged part of the journey. And emails in that stage, we're seeing upwards of like 80% open rates. Which you compare to a marketing email of 20%, like that is massive. Like that's a huge potential for what you can to talk to your customers. And so many brands still are just kind of stop communicating and leave it to the carrier, which also sometimes doesn't even communicate. It's first of all kind of taking control of that. And there's providers out there like parcelLab that will help you do that. Really making that branded experience that means that your customer knows exactly when your parcel is arriving. But then you can kind of go even further, and let's take the health and beauty industry again as an example. Massive influencer industry. So much of their marketing is based around influencer marketing. Imagine if you could say, I've bought something from YSL because Emma Louise Connolly, the influencer, has promoted their foundation, and I've bought it because of her influencer campaign, and I've done the swipe up. Imagine now that my delivery emails are all based around her influencer campaign, and it's really honing in on that data, because you'll see the source of that transaction and kind of building those really personalized experiences. Or we go to furniture. I've bought a wardrobe. Why not send me an assembly video just as I get my delivery success notification? Step-by-step guide, really simple. Here's what you're going to need. Here's how to assemble it. Here's also, do you need some coat hangers? Here's a free delivery code if you've forgotten to get some. All these little things that you can start to really hone into that customer journey and make them feel really appreciated at the right times. And I mean, I could talk for hours on this. I have so many examples, but yeah, I mean, the possibilities are really endless when you come to really honing in on what your customer needs, and also just pushing the boundaries. Be that first retailer that does that amazing personalized experience. And I don't know about anyone else, I remember them. When I get that really amazing email that stands out, I'm going to remember that brand, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to shop at them again.
Thank you for that. 80% open rate is astonishing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
What's considered a good open rate these days? What's the current view on that, Katharine?
So a good, for a marketing email, which I guess would be our industry standard, is 20 to 25%.
Right. Okay.
So it's pretty crazy. I can't remember the click-through rate off the top of my head, but a marketing email I think is about 2 to 3, and delivery emails is about 20 to 25. So again, and also when you then take them back to your website, you can then retarget them, and it opens up that possibility. You can upsell to them, you can use social sharing. There's a whole kind of abundance of amazing things you can do when you have that control.
Do you have to be cautious based on GDPR regulations that if the customer hasn't opted in for marketing communications, that you don't put that into delivery emails and messages, or is there flex there?
Yeah, it's a bit of a grey. So if it's on the order status page, I think it's okay because it's obviously public domain. Right. But yeah, in your delivery emails, you have to be kind of careful. If it's based off the transaction, then it can be okay. So like a assembly video, for example, is based off what they've bought, so that data is shared. But yeah, it's kind of not pushing marketing when you can't.
But I think excellent points, and Katharine's entirely right. With a couple of clients, we basically just set up a simple algorithm to suppress that. So in effect, seeing it as another communication engagement channel is absolutely right, because most companies and retailers are not using that anywhere to near the way it should be. No, really good points.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katharine. Right, we're going to talk to the audience, or rather we're going to answer some of their questions. And I'm going to come to you first, Trevor. And Trevor and Jack, I'm going to give you this question to share, please. So hear from you both. This is from Michael. Michael's saying, given that there's no proprietary data on who does not shop at a particular retailer, how would you suggest such data is gathered? Coming to you first, Trevor, please. So proprietary data on who doesn't shop with you, how would you suggest you get that data?
I think it's a really thing of knownness. So you talked about the phrase earlier of single view of the customer, and with those 3 legs, so you start to build up that picture of what your customer is looking at and what are those data points. The key on proprietary data of customers who are not shopping with you is the difference. Now, this is very simply between your known customers and your unknown customers. So whilst you're building up a view of those known customers who are shopping with you, at the same time, you're doing the same with the unknown. So you're collecting a lot of what I would call that digital exhaust. So people who have started to look at your site, started to interact with you, started to look at your social, looking at payment history, ones where you've not captured or they've opted into their details. So the tech is there to do it. But when you start to build up that single view of the customer, you're building up both the known and the unknown customers. But I'm sure Jack's got some points to add to that, or might completely disagree.
Slightly different.
Thanks, Michael, for the question. Jack, your view on that?
Yeah, slightly different perspective. So this is, I loved the point made earlier by Shweta on acquisition. Without acquisition, brands are always going to struggle. There's a big thing about retention is everything, but it's just not true. If you're not driving acquisition, then you're probably gonna shrink. But and I would love to come back to that if we get time at the end. But on that specific question, Michael, I would use quite a traditional research method. So I'd use a combination of quantitative and qualitative research to the market, subject to the audience, national representative, so at least 2,000 participants on a quantitative online survey, and then normally led by qualitative, so focus groups or roundtables, working with a decent research agency that can help you understand who your customers are in lieu of proprietary data, who your customers aren't, and then trying to find what do your current customers love that potentially this portion of non-customers might love as well. It also creates a huge positioning challenge for businesses, like how are you positioning and who are you targeting? But that's the way, sort of very objectively, that I would approach it. I would use traditional research.
No, Jack, I was going to say Jack's 100% right. You need to use both, and you can't build that up, particularly around any good effective acquisition strategies. I think the current stat is acquiring a customer is 5 times as expensive as retaining a customer. So the ability to actually, any investment you put into that acquisition is good. And as to Jack's point, any money going into good quant and qual research or any insight is money well spent.
Yeah. And if I may add just like another point on
please
that
do.
one. Yeah, so I think, there are a lot of great, for many industries, a lot of great market data providers. So people like Kantar, NPD, who really, you can use that data to kind of understand really effectively, kind of being able to kind of size and segment the market by people who, particularly for bigger brands, you can say actually, this group of people don't shop whatever it might be, Samsung or River Island, what makes them, actually. And if you segment them further, if you kind of look at people who are tech engaged or fashion engaged, however you want to segment them, you can really get under the crux of where else they're shopping and understand actually what are they doing differently to your current customers, and what is that kind of difference between why they shop somewhere else versus they shop with you. Of course, the challenge with market data is that it only really is available for kind of bigger brands. Yeah. So I'd say for, if you're a smaller brand, it's, qualitative research is hugely valuable, to kind of understand, like, hey, let me take you into my store, my competitor's store, my website, my competitor's website. What do you like? Why do you prefer this website? What is it giving you that mine currently isn't, that makes you shop there?
I'm going to stay with you, Shweta, if I may, as well. And Michael, thank you for the question again. I hope those panelists have given you some insights that can be useful there as well. Shweta, staying with you for a sec, kind of leading on from our Debenhams conversation earlier as well, where companies that have got limited budgets, if they haven't got much money to spend, what is the best investment for sourcing insight?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important to have some kind of agile insights capability. So there's a lot of providers now that have quick access panels where you can literally turn around a survey and results within 2 weeks. I think especially with insights being quite new as a function, you need to be able to be really agile and answer those questions that your stakeholders are coming to you with, and really be able to kind of turn around those answers in that small window to have maximum impact. Like I said earlier, it's ideally we want to be in a position where we're coming in at the beginning of the process, but in the short, where we can, it's important to answer questions quickly and effectively. That being said, I think it's also really important to not lose sight of the bigger picture. So where budget is permitting, to buy into some kind of market data, whether that's quarterly or even biannually. I think it's really important to understand what's happening in the market, which of your competitors are gaining share, are consumers becoming a lot more price conscious, like where are they going, what are they buying, what categories are becoming bigger. All of these things are hugely important to make sure that you're able to respond to day-to-day kind of queries and support with data, but also you're thinking about the bigger long-term strategy that can be supported through market data.
Could I just add a quick point to that?
Please do, Jack. Yeah.
Because, and I hope none of my clients are watching, but I often see people hide behind budgets as a reason not to do sort of a proper planning and research process.
Absolutely.
And I actually did a webinar about this ages ago, but there is so much data available for free, whether it's just using Google to its full potential and finding snippets of market research here and there and then piecing them together. Go into stores and watch your customers with permission. Ring your customers with a short 5-6 question survey to get some insights on why they shop and how they shop. There's so much that can be done without spending a penny. It just takes a little bit of time and effort. And I would really encourage smaller companies to do that and to not necessarily hide behind the fact that they have no money.
Yeah, that's a really great point.
Michael has actually responded to you guys and said, thank you so much. Some terrific answers. Good to hear that there's still a role for traditional market research, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. Not sure I can actually say the second word, but there you go. You get the idea, right? So glad that helped, Michael. Thank you very much. Katharine, I've got a question for you, actually. It's actually directed at you. So I'm going to ask that on behalf of Pradeep. Katharine, experience loyal than brand loyal. That's an amazing insight. But is it driven because of influencer culture or something else?
I think there's probably a few different things that have influenced it. We're living in a time when we are filled with opportunities and different choices. No longer do you just go to your local high street to buy what you need. You go online and there's 20 different stores that will give you that product and probably the same price and the same product, depending on what you're buying. So I think this is where it's really come into its own in terms of that experience, and people, just the shift, brands are having to work harder and harder to create that customer loyalty. And it's harder to acquire a customer now. And so many brands focus on that acquisition and kind of forget about that loyalty building. And actually, when you can create that community, I think that's when brand loyalty really comes into its own. But often, there's that experience. And I mean, I know that if I have a terrible experience, it really puts me off. Even if I've loved that brand for years, you kind of step back and be like, well, I can get this product somewhere else. Why am I going to go through that again? It's taken 2 months for my product to arrive. What's going on? Or I can't get next day delivery anymore. That's the reason I used to shop with them so much. I'm maybe going to go somewhere else that can kind of fulfill that need. So it's a really interesting topic, and it's one that can be delved into for so long, and I think is still evolving and expanding, and we're really learning what it means to be experienced and brand loyal. And I do think there's also a slight generational, maybe even difference there, and maybe we're just, as we're growing up in a digital world, we're becoming more experience loyal because we have just always grown up with that possibility. I think it's going to be really interesting. And I was reading about, I don't know if anyone's read about it, the metaverse the other day. And I was like, that's just going to open up an even bigger thing that is just like brands are going to have to try harder and harder. And I think it's a really exciting time for retail though. And it's a really exciting time for these brands to really be the first people and the innovators.
Retail Bulletin, the team, I think we've got a whole new webinar just on that subject alone there. So there's one for the future. Katharine, staying with you for a sec. Actually, we've had a question in from Georgia, which is leading from your point earlier about personalized delivery emails. Georgia says, as a consumer, I can be wowed by truly remarkable personalization, but completely turned off when I get an email that says, for example, dear Roger, dear Georgia, and so on, or a promotion for a totally irrelevant product. How do you ensure the tech or the people or the process do get it right every time?
I think this is the thing, things go wrong, and algorithms go wrong. And I've had it before. I've been served like an upsell for like a men's hoodie or something. And I'm like, well, I've bought like something entirely irrelevant, and there's just things go wrong. They're always going to happen. But I think it's using where you can. And so many businesses, sometimes they're afraid to do it. Obviously, there's the cost element, is using those external suppliers. Like they are the experts. They constantly have people checking their products and they're checking their personalization tools, whether it's a product upsell tool or a personalization tool. they are the experts. So where you can, utilizing those partnerships and relationships, but also for me as a customer, if something goes really wrong, I tend to feed back to a retailer as well, because I would want to know if my algorithm's going really wrong. So also it's just kind of sharing that information, not publicly, so you don't kind of, you know, shame them, but it's kind of saying, FYI, think something's going wrong here, so that they can check that. But yeah, from, I guess, the tech side, I'd have to ask my tech team more than I know. But yeah, it's kind of just keeping that regular insight into your algorithms and your tools that you're using to make sure that they are working. And again, it comes back to those insights. If you don't check things are working, and you don't look at the data in front of you, and you don't keep assessing how a tool's working, you're not going to know if things are going wrong. So it's looking, yeah, how many people are clicking on my product recommendations? If that suddenly dropped by 50%, maybe they're not right. So yeah, it's kind of that constant review of what's going out to your customers.
Excellent. And I'll tell you something that hasn't dropped by 50%. That's our audience number. They're still with us as well. So thank you very much. We are coming to a close, would you believe? We've got one more question to answer, and it's from anonymous attendee. So someone's a bit shy, but thank you, anonymous attendee. And I'm going to put this all to all of you as your closing words, please, as well, because they're after some top tips. So anonymous says, for brands that are just at the start or the early stages of considering e-commerce, what would be the top tips you'd give for where to start, what to think about? So top tips for starting your e-commerce journey. Over to you, please, first, Trevor, to close your closing answer.
Yeah, really good session today, Darren. Thanks for the great moderation. Start on e-commerce, keep it simple. And I think a point that Katharine was just touching on, don't forget about that end-to-end customer experience. Sometimes there's a lot of focus on the front-end digital-facing consumer products, but you've got to remember your delivery, your supply chain, your returns. Because to Katharine's point, there's a lot of people like us sitting at home buying stuff online. And if you have issue with payment, returns, or your supply chain, people are going to vote with their feet and not come back. So remember about that end-to-end experience.
Thank you, sir. And thank you very much, as always, for your contribution to the panel today. Jack, your closing words, please, sir, on this subject. Top tips.
I'll try and keep this very brief. So I'd start with, again, using the power of Google, because there is so much information out there about how to successfully venture into e-commerce, including my own website. If you want to look at that, we've got loads of stuff on e-commerce on there. I think the very obvious point is to think about customer experience. So as Trevor said, that's the website, but it's also the in-purchase and post-purchase experience. So operations, customer service, what technology is required to properly facilitate all of that. And even a step down would be, what's the value proposition? If you're a product brand selling through retail, why would a customer buy directly from you versus a retailer? Or if you're a retailer venturing into online, how do you keep that experience seamless and give a customer a reason to visit you there rather than in physical bricks and mortar? So we tend to look at it in value proposition, customer experience, which I mentioned first, and then traffic. How are you going to drive traffic? Do you already have brand recognition that's driving organic, unpaid, or do you need to layer that with, you know, paid search, paid social, etc.? But I would start, the simple answer is start by Googling it, and there's loads of information out there to help.
Great advice. Thank you, Jack, and thank you for your contribution this morning. It's been much appreciated. Shweta, your closing words, please. Top tips.
Sure. I think in terms of your website content, again, be really consumer centric in your website design and website content. Think about it, you know, if whatever your product might be, what's important when, you know, purchasing this product, and make sure you're really highlighting those consumer centric features and benefits. And it's really easy, you know, when you've got a product to kind of get really excited and talk in really technical specs and just kind of overload consumers with a lot of information. So make sure you're kind of slowly unfolding the information at the right stages, at the right journey within the website would be my my top tips.
Thank you, and thank you so much for everything you shared on the panel today as well. It's been really great to have you.
Likewise, it's been a great pleasure.
Catherine, you're going to wrap it up. Final words and top tips, please.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely echoing what's already been said, but also talking to people in the industry, pull on people's expertise. People want to speak about this, especially if they're in the early stages too. They want to share that information. There's a huge passion in the industry, but also focusing on community. There is so much to be said for community building and helping brand success. I don't know if anyone listening has ever shopped with a sports brand called Tala. They are a prime example of this. Go look them up afterwards. They're run by an influencer who had a really great community that she built, and then she created this brand, and every product they ever launched pretty much sells out because they just have such a following from—
What's it called, Katharine? Tala?
Tala, T-L-A-L. T-A-L-L. Oh God, I can't speak today. T-A-L-A.
T-A-L. No worries.
But yeah, I'll drop it in here. But yeah, they're an absolute success story for utilizing community. You know, Gymshark's an even bigger example of that. They are hugely successful businesses because they have listened to what their customers want. They haven't overcomplicated it, bringing it back to that keep it simple. They've said, what are we going to sell? And we're not going to deviate from our product. We're going to really hone in and we're going to make that as amazing as possible, rather than selling loads and suddenly everything becomes a little bit subpar. It's amazing products and not many of them. And I think that's a really great way to start a business.
Thank you, Katharine, for that perfect wrap. And I hadn't heard of Tala's. I'm just looking at their website right now, so I'll check out their website. And thank you also, parcelLab, for your sponsorship again today. We really appreciate it. That's a wrap of session 1 today. An hour has flown by in what feels like minutes, but there has been tons of rich content. Thank you, audience, for sticking with us. Always appreciated. Trevor, Jack, Shweta, Katharine, stellar panel to kick off the Retail Bulletin set of events today. If you can come back later on, we're starting again at 12 o'clock. We've got a cozy one-to-one at 12 o'clock with myself and Chris Liversidge, who's the CEO and founder of QueryClick. If you've enjoyed today's panel and you want to watch some of the insights again, the recording will be released later on. And so you'll be able to catch it on YouTube or LinkedIn as well. And I'm sure if you want to connect with any of our panelists to talk further, LinkedIn would be a great place to do it also. If you can't come back to any of today's events, do join us on the 28th of September, where we're doing an event on the future of the high street with some really interesting panels across the morning. For now then, we are going to take a short break. We'll see you back at 12 o'clock. Thanks again to a brilliant lineup of panelists, and we'll see you very soon. Enjoy the rest of your morning.
Thanks,